Hello family, enjoy this relaxing moment with AfriTales 38. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comment section and generously hit the like button because it means a lot to us. Please relax and enjoy as we dive in the story. The Midnight Cry. It was the third night in a row Amara had shown up at Mama Ifeoma's doorstep, face flushed, wrapper tied carelessly, eyes wide with frustration and a little shame. Mama Ifeoma, a widow in her 60s known for minding everyone's business and running the Women of Wisdom prayer group, stood at her doorway in disbelief. Again, Amara. Midnight. What happened this time? She asked, her voice part disbelief, part concern. Amara didn't speak at first. She simply pointed toward the dim-lit street, where her husband's silhouette could still be seen pacing outside their bungalow. "It's Jack again," Amara whispered. "I can't take it anymore." "What did he do this time? Did he hit you?" "No, it's not that. It's what he does in bed." Mama Ifeoma's brows knitted in confusion. "You mean he's cheating on you?" Amara shook her head. "No. He's not cheating. That's the problem. He wants me, all the time. Morning, afternoon, midnight, even when I'm tired. I'm his wife, not a machine." She broke into a sob, more from exhaustion than sadness. By now, two neighbors had come out in wrappers and headscarves, drawn by the soft chaos. "What's going on?" asked Madame Gloria from the next flat, arms crossed. "It's Amara again," Mama Ifeoma replied. "She says Jack is doing too much." The women gasped. Some chuckled. "Too much how?" Amara stood tall, eyes blazing. "Every day, 3 times a day. He touches me like a teenage boy discovering his first crush. Even when I pretend to sleep, he starts whispering. Just 1 round, my sugar cake. But 1 round becomes 3. He doesn't get tired." Now it wasn't just the women in the compound listening, men had begun to peek through their curtains too. "Is that not what some women are praying for?" one of the older women murmured. "But it's not love anymore," Amara fired back. "It's obsession. I feel like I'm being used, not loved." Suddenly, the front gate creaked open, and Jack stepped in, tall, handsome, and looking deeply confused. "My love," he said gently, "I thought you were using the toilet. Why are you here again?" "Because I can't breathe, Jack. I don't want to die from pleasure." The crowd burst into whispers. Jack looked around, then rubbed his head. "So it's now a crime to love your wife?" Mama Ifeoma raised her hand. "Everybody calm down. We need to sit down and talk about this. This is no longer just bedroom drama. This is spiritual. This is emotional. Maybe even medical." Someone from the back added, "Or maybe Jack has joined something. Why is he always in the mood?" Amara stared at the crowd. "If I talk now, they'll say I'm ungrateful. But let me tell you, when a man wants you day and night, and you have no rest, even paradise can become a prison." Suddenly, it wasn't funny anymore. Everyone grew quiet. The laughter faded. Because deep down, some of the women realized, this wasn't just about sex. It was about control. It was about balance. It was about a woman begging to be seen as more than just a body. The secrets beneath the sheets. The next morning, Amara didn't return home. Instead, she slept on Mama Ifeoma's couch, curled up in a wrapper with her phone turned off. Her eyes were puffy, her spirit drained. At home, Jack paced the sitting room like a lion in a cage. The house was spotless, Amara always kept it that way, but it felt empty without her voice, her scent, her presence. He glanced at the bedroom door, then at the untouched pot of egusi on the stove. He sighed. "All this because I love my wife?" Meanwhile, in Mama Ifeoma's living room, the women had gathered again. "You're saying he's always like this?" one asked. Amara nodded. "At first, it felt romantic. We just got married. I thought he was excited. But it didn't stop. Even during my period, even when I was sick, he still wanted me." One of the women leaned in, lowering her voice. Are you sure he hasn't joined one of those herbal enhancement cults? Or taken something to increase libido? Amora looked puzzled. Like what? You know those men who rub all those funny things on their privates, manpower, Kayan Motor for men, Tiger something. Tiger Power, someone corrected from the back. They all laughed nervously. But the thought began to plant itself in Amora's head. Could it be true? That evening, she returned home, but not to reconcile. She walked in while Chaik was napping on the couch and quietly picked up his phone. No password. Just as she expected. Chaik had always bragged that he had nothing to hide. She scrolled through his browser. Nothing unusual. Then she checked his WhatsApp. That's when she saw it. A group chat named The Circle of Fire. She clicked. The messages hit her like cold water. Omo, that route way Baba give me work die. My wife dey run comot house yesterday. Guy, this one no be normal juju, no woman enslaving juju. Make sure say you no give her break or them they respect you more when you dey collect steady. Amora's hands trembled. What was this? A group of married men, bragging about using charms and herbs to make their wives more submissive. She scrolled more. Then she saw Chaik's message from a few weeks ago. Boba says the new blend will make her beg for it. I've already started rubbing it in my cream. Amora dropped the phone. She wanted to scream, but her throat closed up. The man she married, the one who sang love songs to her, massaged her feet at night, bought her flowers on Tuesdays, had been using something on her. Secretly. Without her consent. She suddenly remembered the time she felt dizzy after sex. The way her dreams had grown strange and vivid. The unexplained palpitations in the middle of the night. It wasn't love. It was control. And she had walked right into it. She tiptoed out, tears welling in her eyes. But before she reached the door, she heard his voice. You read my chats, didn't you? She froze. Chaik was standing behind her, shirtless, eyes unreadable. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this to me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked past her and picked up his phone. I wanted us to be close. I didn't want to lose that fire. You were always tired, distant. I thought maybe this would bring us back. Amora blinked, her voice hoarse. So your solution was to drug me with some root from a baba in the bush. You call that love? Chaik rubbed his face. I didn't think it was bad. It's not like you were saying no. Because I didn't know, she snapped. You violated me, Chaik. The word violated hung heavy in the air. He didn't fight it. He didn't argue. He just sat down. And for the first time since they got married, Amora saw him shrink. Not physically, but as a man. A husband. A protector. He looked lost. I think we need space, she said quietly. You need help, and I need to breathe. And with that, she walked out. No drama. No crowd. Just the sound of the front door closing gently behind her. Scars from the past. 2 days after walking out, Amora checked into a quiet guest house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful, no creaking beds, no midnight whispers, no unending touch. Just silence. And her thoughts. She hadn't told anyone where she was, not even Mama Ifeoma. Her phone rang non-stop the first night, Chaik, Mama Ifeoma, her sister Ada, even her pastor. She turned it off. She needed air. Not the kind you breathe, but the kind you feel when you're finally away from someone who had you wrapped in invisible chains. She stared at the ceiling and whispered to herself, how did we even get here? Their love story had started like a fairy tale. They met during NYSC. Chaik had been the charismatic group leader, always volunteering, always charming. He was gentle, respectful, a man who read poetry and cooked egusi with okporoko like a native. Amora had been drawn to him like bees to honey. They dated for 2 years before marrying. The first 3 months of marriage were passionate, yes, but Amora had noticed something off early on. His intense hunger, the way he watched her like she might vanish, how he clung to her even when she needed space. She had chalked it up to love. But love doesn't ignore your no. Love doesn't manipulate you with roots and potions. Love doesn't hide behind herbs. She reached into her bag, pulled out a journal, and began to write, something she hadn't done in months. I don't want a husband who devours me. I want one who holds me, softly. Who understands that intimacy is not just body, but breath, timing, trust. She didn't know what came next, but she knew she wasn't going back. Not yet. Not unless things changed. Meanwhile, Jack sat on the floor of their bedroom, his head buried in his palms. He hadn't shaved. He hadn't eaten. His house smelled like heartbreak and untouched food. He replayed the scene over and over, Amora reading the messages. Her face frozen with betrayal. The word violated echoing in his skull like a bell of guilt. But he didn't think he was a monster. Just desperate. Too desperate. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Hello, came the voice. Mama, he whispered. His mother sounded surprised. Chike. Is everything okay? No. Mama, I messed up. There was a long pause. Talk to me, my son. And for the first time since his wedding, Chike opened up. He told her everything about the circle of fire, the herbal mixtures, the advice from his friends who claimed women only respected men who handled them daily. She didn't yell. She didn't shame him. She only sighed deeply. You've forgotten, she said quietly. You've forgotten your father's story. Chike swallowed. What do you mean? Your father ruined our marriage with the same foolish obsession. Always thinking manhood was in how many times he could perform. He made me feel like an object, used me like a drug. I begged, I cried, I prayed, and eventually, I packed my bags and left. Silence. Mama, why didn't you ever tell me? Because you were too young. And because I was ashamed. But I see now, that silence raised you to become him. Those words broke him more than Amora's departure. And in that moment, something shifted in Chike. It wasn't regret alone. It was awareness. He needed help not just to save his marriage, but to unlearn the warped ideas of masculinity he had inherited. Amora, meanwhile, had started attending therapy. Not because she was broken, but because she needed to heal the small fractures that came from being treated like property. Her therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Gozi, asked her a simple question. When was the last time you felt in control of your own body? Amora couldn't answer. Tears welled up instead. She had been loved, but not heard. Touched, but not respected. Desired, but not understood. A week later, Chike showed up at her guest house. He didn't knock. He waited outside, holding a letter. When Amora came down for fresh air, she froze. He looked thin, pale, but calmer. I won't stay, he said. I just want you to read this. She took the letter cautiously. Later, inside, she read it. It was not an apology, it was a confession. A raw, honest account of everything, his childhood, his insecurities, his fear of being abandoned. How his friend's toxic advice shaped his thinking. And how watching her leave woke him up. He ended the letter with just one line. If I ever touch you again, it will be with your full consent, your joy, and your peace. Not because I can, but because you want me to. For the first time, Amora cried for him, not out of pain, but because maybe, just maybe, change was possible. Love after silence. A month passed. Amora didn't return home. But she also didn't file for divorce. It was a time of pause, a needed silence after a storm that had nearly drowned both of them. While Chike buried himself in therapy, Amora focused on rediscovering herself, not as a wife, not as a body, but as a woman who once had dreams outside the home. She took up a course in digital marketing. She started running early in the morning, letting her legs carry her toward freedom she hadn't felt in years. And she did something even more shocking to herself, she bought a second phone. One for friends, work, and peace. The old number, the one Chike had, remained switched off most days. I'm not punishing him, she told her therapist one morning, I'm just protecting myself. Ngozi smiled. That's not selfish, Amora. That's self-care. Meanwhile, Chike had begun to attend a men's group recommended by his counselor, Men for Emotional Awareness, held every Thursday in a church hall with plastic chairs and iced water sachets. He walked in on the first day, expecting other men like him, tough, embarrassed, ashamed. Instead, he saw bankers, teachers, pastors, all seated in a circle. One of the leaders, a bald man named Uncle Dave, began the session. Before we talk about loving our wives better, he said, we must confront the false ideas that taught us that women are ours to conquer, not love. The room was quiet. And Chike felt his walls start to crack again. He listened as one man shared how he drove his wife into depression by demanding sex as payment for paying bills. Another man confessed to secretly using performance enhancers until it wrecked his health and his marriage. By the end of the session, Chike wasn't just broken. He was honest. He raised his hand, stood slowly, and said, my name is Chike. And I've never known how to love without control. Applause filled the room, not because he was perfect, but because he had taken the first step. That night, Amora opened her new phone to find a message from an unknown number. I'm not trying to get you back. I'm trying to become someone worth returning to. No name. No pressure. Just truth. And that made her smile. For the first time in weeks, she called him. Not to argue. Not to return. Just to talk. They spoke for an hour, about books, their childhoods, and even the new meals she'd been learning to cook. No mention of the bedroom. Just conversation. Just friendship. And that was what she had craved most. Weeks turned into months. Chike no longer slept in the master bedroom. He moved his mattress into the guest room. He told himself, until I fix what broke in me, I have no business lying where trust once lived. He went to therapy every week. He joined a book club. He stopped replying to messages from the Circle of Fire. Eventually, he left the group. Then reported it anonymously to a wellness NGO that helped women. He had become a different man, not because Amora demanded it, but because he was tired of being a slave to a lie that said dominance equals love. Then one Saturday, there was a knock on his door. Chike opened it, and there she was. Amora. Not with bags or anger. Just herself. In jeans and a yellow blouse. You have a visitor, she asked, a little teasing. He stepped aside. You're always welcome. She looked around the house. It smelled different. There were new books on the table. A Bible. A journal. She sat. He served her zobo. They talked. Laughed. Reflected. And just as she stood to leave, he asked, do I have your permission to hug you? She smiled, soft and genuine. You do. And as they embraced, no pressure, no heat, just warmth, Amora whispered, maybe we can begin again. From the start. Chike nodded, holding her gently. I would love that. The new covenant. It was 6 months since Amora first walked out of their home, and yet, somehow, everything felt new again. But this time, they weren't rushing. They met once a week, like teenagers in a long-distance romance. Sometimes at a cafe. Sometimes at the beach. Sometimes at the church garden, where no one asks too many questions. No more assumptions. No more demands. Just two people, learning each other again. Relearning how to talk. How to listen. How to exist without pressure. At one of their weekly meetings, Amora brought a notebook and placed it on the table. What's this? Chike asked. She smiled. A new kind of marriage proposal. He opened it. Inside were 10 handwritten pages, titled The New Covenant. Not a legal document. Not a religious vow. But a personal agreement. Crafted in ink and heart. Some of the points read: My body is not a reward or a duty, it's a gift. To be given willingly, not taken. We will schedule intimacy, not just wait for impulse. Because romance should be sacred, not pressured. We will go to counseling once a month, together, even when nothing seems wrong. You will never use silence as punishment. I will never use touch as manipulation. We will relearn love, the slow way. Chike blinked away tears as he read it. It wasn't romantic in the usual way. No roses. No perfume. No lace lingerie. But it was more intimate than anything they'd ever shared. Do you agree? She asked. He nodded. I do. And that was how they got remarried. Not with rings. Not with witnesses. But with understanding. A few months later, they moved back in together. Chike no longer slept with pride in his chest, but peace in his heart. He no longer chased Amora's body like a battlefield to conquer, but as a soul to respect. He still desired her, dearly, but never without checking in first, asking softly. Are you in the mood? How do you feel tonight? Do you want to cuddle instead? And Amora, having reclaimed her power, now had the freedom to say yes, no, or a later, without fear or guilt. Sometimes they shared long, passionate nights. Sometimes they simply held hands and fell asleep. And both were okay. One evening, they hosted a small dinner with close friends. Laughter filled the air. Someone asked how long they'd been married. Amora smiled. 5 years, plus 6 months apart. Chike chuckled. It took the 6 months to learn what the 5 years couldn't teach us. Everyone laughed. But Amora knew it wasn't a joke. They had rebuilt their love from the ashes of obsession, from the edge of control, into something safe, mutual, and real. Not perfect. But powerful. And on that night, as they cleared dishes and the guests said goodbye, Chike whispered in her ear. Thank you for not giving up on us even when you walked away. Amora leaned her head on his shoulder. Walking away was the only way I could come back home. Letters to the Next Generation. Years later, Amora began to write a blog titled The Soft Space, Conversations on Consent and Marriage. She shared her story, not with bitterness, but with purpose. And one day, she received a message from a woman across the country who wrote, Thank you. I thought I was crazy for asking for rest. But your story reminded me that peace is not a luxury in marriage, it's a right. Amora smiled and wrote back. Peace is not the absence of sex. It's the presence of choice. And with that, she closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed. In her own time. On her own terms.